In my hands, I've got two of what are undoubtedly going to be the hottest drivers of 2025. I've got the TaylorMade Qi35 and I've got the Ping G440 Max. But which one's better? Well, it's time to find out. So I'm going to break this down into 4 categories. We're going to go through the looks, the sound and the feel, distance and forgiveness. So let's get started with the looks. I like to think of looks as almost 2 separate categories. So you've got kind of the shelf appeal or the in the bag look when you're looking down on the sole. And you've also got the playing position or the address position point of view, which to me is much more relevant with all of these clubs. But starting with that in the shelf position, and we've got 2 completely different drivers here. So with TaylorMade, we've got this sort of light grey carbon effect which stretches across the whole crown, which I think looks incredible. It looks like the interior of a supercar. We've got minimal sort of accent colours. We've got a tiny little splash of this light green that they've used really sparingly. And if you've read any of my reviews in Golf Monthly or on the website at all, you'll know how much of a fan I am of the looks of this TaylorMade Qi35 from this particular angle. The Ping's a little bit different, so we've got a lot more shine and chrome going on here. We've got quite a big kind of bare and sparse area in the middle where they've stamped the Ping in their chrome. And to me, it just isn't quite as sophisticated as the TaylorMade. The blue colorway isn't necessarily my favorite either. It harks back to the original G series, which a lot of you will have known and loved. But the retro effect just hasn't quite done it for me here in this position. Then when you put them in behind the ball, again, you've got super different drivers. From a profile point of view, the TaylorMade Qi35 is a lot more rounded. It's about as rounded a head as I've seen on any driver, maybe ever actually. And then when you go over to the Ping, it's slightly more pear-shaped and a little bit more compact. If you want to talk about the crowns here for a second, the TaylorMade is, I love that they've stuck with this infinity crown where they've not broken it up with anything at all. They've just got this light grey matte carbon all over it. It looks fantastic. It's not interrupted with a banner strip like it would have been on Stealth or Sim or anything like that. That infinity crown is really clean for me. One thing I'm really pleased they've stuck with as well is this little white line that goes across the top of the leading edge there, or the top edge rather, which really helps alignment, helps differentiate the face from the crown and really helps alignment. To me, that profile looks fantastic. Ping is a little bit different, so it's a touch fussier. What they've done this year, they've gone with the carbon fly wrap crown in the Max range, which historically has only ever been in LST, which I think is a really good move. It makes the whole range a bit more cohesive because it's on the Max and the SFT version as well. So the whole range has become a bit more cohesive and neat and tidy. And I think it just makes the head look a little bit more premium. It does feel a little bit more compact in profile behind the ball because TaylorMade have obviously pushed that head down and spread the weight out a little bit, and it's really sort of spread the profile and increased the footprint. So if you're someone who likes the look of a more compact head, then you're probably going to err towards the Ping in this department. But for me, I can't get away from the beautiful finish on that TaylorMade driver, and I'm a sucker for a rounded head. So for me in this section, TaylorMade takes it. Onto the sound and the feel now, and I've put those 2 in the same category because they're actually really closely linked. The sound you get at impact sends a lot of messages to your fingers and really sort of influences the way the driver feels. You should try it sometime. Hit some shots with some earbuds in or some headphones, and it's really difficult to sort of ascertain the feel of the driver because sound is so important. So I'm going to start with the Ping first of all, and let's just hit a couple away and see what we think in terms of the noise. I quite like that. It's quite lively at strike, which is something I really enjoy. Now that's an interesting one. That was a little bit lower in the face, and that tends to be my sort of predominant miss, I would say. A little bit thin and a little bit heely, and the tech that's involved in this head, I think I've just seen that working really, really well. Ping have worked very hard to move the centre of gravity down in the head to give you a bit more area above that centre of gravity to get those high launching, low spinning shots. But when you do hit it thin, like I have done there, you get a little bit more mass behind the ball at strike. So I'm getting a little bit less vibration than I ordinarily have from maybe the G430 range, which is really encouraging for me because, as I said, that sort of lower in the face strike is my more predominant miss. There was another one, slightly low and out of the heel, but that still feels really, really solid. That sort of gobbled up that predominant miss that I get. I might zoom in on that in a minute and show you where that little miss is low on the heel. So that's really promising. I enjoyed that. Let's grab the TaylorMade. So I've already tested this, but it's interesting, I've not necessarily tested them next to each other. So I'm expecting, well, I'll tell you what I'm expecting a slightly duller, more muted sound from the sort of carbon face. We're in the carbon wood era still with TaylorMade. So let's see what we get as a noise. Yeah, exactly what I thought there. I hope you picked that up on the audio. It's a much sort of quieter, lower pitch noise, a bit more of a sort of a dull, muted thud. And there's a lot of people out there that really like that. And I've really enjoyed that over the past few years with TaylorMade. Yeah, exactly that. Just a slightly duller, less, I hesitate to say tinny because the G440 is far from tinny, but it is certainly a little bit more high pitched. Now, I think if you're someone that prefers that kind of quieter, more muted, slightly duller sound at impact, more of a thud, then you're going to steer towards this Qi35 because it gives you that in abundance. It still feels nice and lively. And there's plenty of pop off the face, which you might see later in the video. But for me, I think I'm going to give it to the Ping in this scenario, simply because I think I'm enjoying that slightly livelier acoustic, that little bit more zing that I'm getting at strike. And I love, despite the fact that the TaylorMade technology has done the same, they've lowered that center of gravity to get a bit more mass behind strike. I did find in all of my testing that, again, that you can read on Golf Monthly, lower strikes in the head and off the face of the G440 range are being really, really flattered. And that's my predominant miss. So from a bias point of view for me, I'm probably just going to have to give it to the Ping there. I hope you're enjoying the battle between these two titanic drivers. And if you are enjoying this video, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well, and comment down below which one would you prefer in your bag for 2025. Now we're going to get into the distance, but I am going to talk you kind of through the full set of launch monitor data that I got that equates to that total distance. I'm going to pop that up on the screen for you now. So as you can see, from a ball speed point of view, there wasn't really much in it, with the Qi35 from TaylorMade just shading it by less than half a mile per hour. Again, in terms of launch, very similar, both around the 12-degree mark. G430 Max just launching a touch high there at 12.2 versus 11.8. Now, this is the area that I found sort of probably sculpted the whole distance results that you're going to see up there. The spin, the Qi35, even in its more neutral setting with the heavier weight at the back, was spinning down at 2,300, just over 2,300 revs for me, which then brought me to an apex height of less than 100 feet, over 300 yards of carry, and was running out to 317.4 yards, which is a really impressive distance output for me personally. With the G440 Max there, it was up at 3,100 revs, just over. And what that did is just create that slightly risier ball flight for me, peaking out at 114 feet of height. Carry was still pretty healthy at basically 290 yards, but I wasn't getting much rollout there, or equivalent rollout, and it equated to basically the total distance there, which was not dissimilar to the carry distance on the Qi35. So that's how that sort of launch monitor data shapes out, and it's very difficult for me not to give it to the TaylorMade Qi35 in this section. On to forgiveness. Now, that's a really important category for everyone, and certainly it's growing to be a more important category for me over the years, because none of us are robots. We're all humans. We're all going to miss the middle of the face on a fairly regular basis. So it's really important to have a driver that's going to help you with that. But forgiveness is a really difficult category to quantify accurately. While we have things like GC Quad and TrackMan that can isolate your impact location to within a millimeter, which is fantastic, so you can kind of measure miss hits against one another to an extent. What it doesn't tell you is how you've arrived at that particular strike in terms of your delivery, your speed, your attack angles, etc. So it's very difficult to get two miss hits exactly the same, both in location and in terms of delivery, which makes it really difficult to quantify. So for me, probably the best way to do that is to actually get out on the golf course and play holes you're familiar with, and you really get a good picture with your eyes of where you would end up on certain golf holes based on particular strikes. And no one knows your own golf game like yourself in terms of what swing you've put on the ball, and you can really generally feel how severe a miss hit is. Now, I've been out on the golf course with both of these drivers on a few occasions now, and I feel like I've got a really good flavour of how they perform both when I hit them out of the middle and certainly when I do miss the middle of the club face. Now, I have to say the technology story in both of these drivers, which is sort of that lower and back CG to help that MOI, has done a really good job. They're both exceptionally forgiving drivers, both off the heel, toe, and on those vertical miss hits a little bit when you catch it a little bit lower in the face or even higher in the face. I think both have done a really, really good job, and the main tech stories of the CG has actually really paid off. However, as I alluded to earlier in the video, I think one of these drivers really flatters my particular miss hit here. So this is all about me. I'm making this about me here. My miss hit being low on the face and in the heel. I found the G440 Max just really receptive and friendly on that low heel strike that I get a lot. So while it lost the distance battle, which is probably more based on those centered hits and the average of what I was getting there, when I hit that miss hit, which is really sort of familiar to me, low out of the heel, I was retaining a little bit more ball speed relative to where it started from the G440 Max. And because I'm selfish, I'm going to give the forgiveness to the G440 Max in this regard. So those of you keeping score will probably notice it is 2-2, but I'm not going to leave it as a draw because that's really boring. So I'm going to pick something in a minute, I promise. But I just want to go back through those categories to give you some recommendations. So if we talk about the looks that I spoke about at the start, for me, obviously the Qi35 took that particular category. I love that rounded head and I love the sort of futuristic grey carbon styling there, really did it for me. Now in sound and feel, I went for the G440 Max because I found that liveliness and that slightly higher pitch noise just really resonated with me a little bit more than the sort of dull, thuddy carbon noise from the Qi35. But again, that's subjective. And if you're somebody who prefers that more muted sound, then you're going to want to lean towards the TaylorMade. Now in the distance category, it was pretty clear for me. The TaylorMade Qi35 did a really, really good job. But again, that's based on my individual spin profile. I'm quite a high spinner of a golf ball. So when I find a driver that can keep that down and still create relatively good forgiveness, that's a real winner for me. If you're a player that needs that extra spin to help you get the ball and keep the ball airborne, then you probably might find those distance results are reversed. So you might want to lean towards the G440 Max because it does produce a little bit more spin. Again, in terms of forgiveness, for me, the G440 Max took it, but that was based on my particular miss hit, which is low and out of the heel, and I felt it really excelled in that particular area. But as I said, I'm not sitting on the fence, I'm going to pick a winner, and it's really difficult because in those quantifiable parameters I've just talked about, it is a dead heat. But for me, there's one thing that just elevates one of the drive, and it's just a little bit more adjustability. With the TaylorMade Qi35, and spoiler alert, that's what I've gone for. There's just a little bit more adjustability, if you like. We've got these two split weights on the sole here, which can interchange. You can have the heavy weight at the front and create an even lower, put it into beast mode, as TaylorMade call it, where you really lower that spin profile and get some super penetrating golf shots. Or you can flip it around and have that heavier weight at the back, pull back that MOI, increase the stability and forgiveness, and you've almost got a completely different driver. So you've got some versatility with the Ping as well. We've got this sliding weight at the back, which can sort of fine tune the fade and the draw bias a little bit. But I would say there's just a little bit more on offer from the Qi35. And for me, that's the only way I can split these two drivers. Both excellent products. But for me, the TaylorMade Qi35 just takes it.